Some people walk into a workplace and immediately feel something others don't notice. Not a big event, just a subtle pressure, the hum of fluorescent lights, multiple conversations blending together, keyboards tapping, a chair scraping somewhere behind you. Individually, none of these things matter, but together they begin to build. And if you've ever experienced this, you've probably heard the same advice. Just ignore it. Everyone deals with it. It's not a big deal. But for some people, it is. And the strange part is that even they often wonder why. Why does something that others brush off feel overwhelming? Why does a normal workday sometimes feel like a constant effort to stay focused? If this experience feels familiar, there is a deeper explanation behind it. Not weakness, not a lack of discipline, but a different way the mind processes the world. To understand it, imagine a moment that may feel very familiar. You arrive at work. You sit down. You open your computer, and almost immediately, the environment begins pulling your attention in different directions. A conversation to your left, someone walking past, a notification on your screen, a phone ringing across the room. None of it is dramatic, yet your mind refuses to treat it as background noise. Your attention keeps shifting. You try to focus on your work, but another sound appears, another movement, another interruption. After a while, your energy starts draining. And this is where many people quietly judge themselves. They assume they lack focus or discipline, but what is happening is something much more specific. Some people have nervous systems that process stimulation more deeply than average. Psychologists often call this sensory processing, sensitivity. In everyday language, it's sometimes described as being a highly sensitive person. But the word sensitive often creates the wrong impression. It doesn't simply mean emotional. It means the brain absorbs more information from the environment, more details, more subtle changes, more sensory signals. Most brains filter the environment automatically. They allow only the most important signals to reach conscious awareness. Everything else fades into the background. But for highly sensitive individuals, that filter is more open. The brain doesn't just register the main task. It registers the entire environment around it, which means the mind is processing far more information than people realize. Inside a modern workplace, that difference becomes very noticeable. Most offices are built around constant activity, open spaces, conversations happening everywhere, notifications, meetings, interruptions. For many people, this creates mild distraction. For a highly sensitive nervous system, it creates constant stimulation, not overwhelming in one moment, but exhausting over several hours. This is why many highly sensitive people notice a strange pattern at work. When the environment is calm, they can focus deeply. They think carefully. They produce thoughtful, high-quality work. But when the environment becomes chaotic, their energy drains much faster than others. From the outside, this can look like poor concentration. In reality, their brain is simply processing more input at the same time. Imagine two computers performing the same task. One runs only the main program. The other runs the main program, plus many background processes. Both look the same from the outside, but one will slow down sooner. That is often what sensory overload actually is. Not emotional weakness, just cognitive saturation. When that saturation builds, focus becomes fragile. Small interruptions feel unusually disruptive. Thinking becomes slower. Energy disappears faster than expected, and many people spend years misunderstanding this pattern. They believe the problem is motivation. So they push themselves harder, more coffee, longer, trying to match colleagues who seem unaffected by the environment. But the result often feels the same: fatigue, frustration, and the quiet feeling that something about the workplace simply doesn't fit. Yet the same sensitivity that creates overload also produces powerful strengths. Highly sensitive people often notice patterns others miss. They detect subtle emotional shifts in conversations. They think carefully before making decisions. They produce work that is thoughtful and precise. In the right conditions, their depth of processing becomes a major advantage. But modern work culture rarely explains this difference. Instead, it rewards constant activity, fast replies, multitasking. And those expectations can clash with how a deeply processing mind works best. This creates an invisible tension. Part of you knows you are capable of excellent work. Another part feels constantly overstimulated by the environment. Over time, this tension quietly shapes career choices. Some people feel drawn toward quieter roles. Others move toward remote work or independent projects. Some change environments entirely without fully understanding why certain workplaces felt unbearable. But the key insight is this. The problem is rarely the work itself. It is the sensory intensity surrounding the work. When highly sensitive individuals work in calmer environments, something interesting happens. Their focus becomes stable. Their thinking becomes clear. The same mind that once struggled in chaotic offices begins producing deep insight, careful analysis, creative ideas, thoughtful decisions. And many people only discover this after years of unnecessary self-doubt. There is also another layer to sensory overload. Highly sensitive people often process emotional signals deeply as well. Workplace tension, a sharp tone in a meeting, a subtle disagreement between coworkers. These signals don't get ignored. They get analyzed. The mind begins interpreting them while continuing other tasks. All of this happens quietly in the background, and it uses mental energy, which is why some workdays feel exhausting. Even when nothing physically demanding happened, your brain was simply processing more layers of information. When people finally understand this about themselves, something important changes. They stop treating overstimulation as personal failure. Instead, they begin adjusting their environment. Quieter workspaces, noise-canceling headphones, periods of uninterrupted focus, intentional breaks away from stimulation. These are not luxuries. They are ways of protecting mental energy because the sensitive brain is not fragile, it is intense. It processes the world in high resolution. And high resolution requires more energy. When that reality is respected instead of ignored, something shifts. The same person who once felt overwhelmed in busy environments begins producing thoughtful, high-quality work because their mind finally has the space it needs to operate properly. And this realization often answers many questions people have carried for years. Why certain jobs felt unbearable? Why quiet environments felt unusually productive? Why solitude sometimes improved focus instead of reducing it? The answer was never laziness. It was simply a nervous system that absorbs more of the world. Not better, not worse, just different. And once you understand that difference, the advice to just ignore it starts to sound incomplete. Because the goal was never to ignore the environment. The real goal was to understand how your mind interacts with it. If parts of this experience felt familiar, you may have spent years adapting without realizing why certain environments drained you faster than others. Recognizing that pattern doesn't fix everything immediately, but it replaces confusion with clarity. You start noticing where your mind works best, where your focus stays stable, and where overstimulation begins to build. Those small insights slowly lead to better decisions. Not dramatic life changes, just adjustments that protect your focus and energy, because the world may not become quieter, but understanding how your mind works can make navigating it much easier. And if this perspective resonated with you, you might find it interesting to explore more of the psychology behind how different minds experience the world. If that kind of quiet understanding is something you value, You are welcome to subscribe and continue exploring these ideas here.